Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. Now, the Angolan National Electoral Commission, CNE, has presented the latest provincial results of the elections. According to the electoral body, 97.3% of the votes have been counted. In Parliament results released so far, MPLA has 51.07%, while UNITA has 44.05%. However, angry youth who are dissatisfied with the results so far have taken to the streets in some cities, protesting what they have called unacceptable results. News Central's Bernard Akede has been following the process and now reports.
Amateur videos of angry youths in Angola have started making rounds on social media. The youths are protesting what they call unacceptable results. Preliminary results published by Angola's Electoral Commission gave the ruling People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola, MPLA, 60.65% of the votes, with 33% of ballots counted so far. Ballot counting began after polls closed on Wednesday in the oil-rich nation, where multi-party polls were only introduced in 1992, and most citizens who voted were excited about the smooth process of the exercise.
Graças a Deus me receberam bem, eu votei bem, está tudo na normalia. Agradeci imenso com a nossa segurança também, esteve lá presente, também não aconteceu nada de mal. Gostei.
Eu me sinto feliz, né, por ter exercido o meu direito e o meu dever, não é? E foi simples, foi fácil, não teve nenhuma complicação, né? Estava, digamos, organizada e foi fácil. Voltei na mudança.
Earlier, Angolans home and abroad had eagerly been awaiting the outcome of the most tightly contested votes in its democratic history and were optimistic about casting their votes. The main opposition, the National Union for the Total Independence of Angola, UNITA, led by charismatic leader Adalberto Casta Jr., had 33.85%. The MPLA has ruled Angola for nearly 5 decades after the country gained independence from Portugal. Laurencio, a Soviet-educated former general who had promised a new era for the Southern African nation when he succeeded veteran leader José Eduardo dos Santos 5 years ago, has trumpeted a list of his achievements. But UNITA deputy leader Abel Chivukuvuku said the party's own tally showed it was ahead. Results in past elections have been contested in a process that can take several weeks, and with these recent protests, Angolans fear that this election may be heading in the same direction. Bernard Akede, reporting for News Central.
Pretty interesting one there by Bernard Akede. But still talking about the elections in Angola, we are now joined by Edmilson Ângelo. He's a doctoral researcher and expert of Angolan studies. Thank you for your time this morning. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
All right, so now let's start by looking at the percentage. You know, it says
Right.
you know, a very, very, very thin percentage of separating, you know, the two parties. What does this really
Right.
say about, you know, the voting choices of Angolans?
Right. Like again, like I said, thank you for having me. This is indeed a voting or protest, and I feel like the votes are there and are clear that the youth has spoken out. You know, I think this is the biggest message of this election is how would the results look like and how would the youth accept these results. But this is the first time ever. This is the first time ever that the ruling party in Angola has actually gone down, you know, this low. And obviously more than that is that they actually lost, you know, some of the main constituencies in Angola, such as the capital city, and Luanda, where it represents 1/3 of the electorate population in Angola, and is indeed the gate of the country. What I mean by the gate of the country is where everything happens in terms of politics, in terms of economics, in terms of society. So basically, now, even though this is a win for the MPLA, it really feels like a big loss. And again, like it's a big voice coming from the youth that, you know, this is time for change, and now we're gonna have to see what happens in the next 5 years.
It's interesting, you know, that we're talking about this now, looking at the fact that there have been pockets of violence erupting here and there. Is this the norm in the elections before now? And what would you say about this?
Right. This is not, obviously, we are a country that faced one of the longest civil wars in the continent. And obviously throughout the last, 5 elections, 4 elections, there was always this feeling around, fear whenever we are heading to the polls. But it's very important for me to clear here that some of the image that we saw were actually not connected to the 2 main political parties. They were actually connected to another political party called APN, which pretty much lost and did not manage to even get 1 seat at the assembly. And actually there was scandal around not paying the delegates, and that's the reason why we saw a lot of people actually heading to the headquarters of these political parties and protesting. But so far, this election has actually been a very positive sign in terms of how much Angola is growing in terms of its maturity when it comes to elections. There's been a lot of protests in terms of the digital space, which has actually become the main focus within these elections. I feel like the digital space is the key element, the key takeaway from this election of how state-citizens relationship in Angola is changing. But obviously, we have seen, from the side of the opposition party that yesterday when the results came out, even though they say that there's a high probability that they're gonna contest the results. But again, this is the first time since the end of the war, since independence actually, that the opposition party has actually gone that high. And I feel like they're also taking a position where we actually might accept these results because the difference is not too high. And it's now, we now closer than ever to become government.
What would be, just quickly if you can, what would be the significance of UNITA victory? What would this mean to Angolans?
This is a very good question, because even though we are seeing this growth within the opposition party, these elections are really all about the youth, who account for majority of the population, and who are actually, the way I see it is that the youth actually use the opposition party as a means to the end of the message that they wanted to pass to everybody, because now the expectation, not just on the ruling party, but also on the opposition party, who now has more space of maneuver. But obviously people want change, and obviously the easiest way to get to that change is through a political party that is perhaps more capable of changing the direction of the country, which is UNITA. But this is also a message for the opposition party that now more than ever, the youth are not willing to accept the youth years to be lost just like that. And they're going to put pressure both on the ruling party, but also on the opposition party, who now has more power, especially in places like Rwanda where everything happens.
Let's talk about Angola's democracy. Now, the MPLA has been in office, has been in power for years. And this is the first, a fifth multi-party election that we are having since 1992. Unfortunately, there have been some concerns as regards how truly free or how democratic is Angola. And also referring to the elections, we've seen claims, tweets, people have been claiming that the election has been hijacked. They've gone as far as tagging the US President Joe Biden, stating that the elections have not been free and fair and have been attacked. So talk to us about Angola's democracy, as well as the possibility, likelihood of this election being referred to as free and fair.
Right. That's a very important point. The first thing that we have to look at is that the fact that within our history, obviously we faced one of the longest civil war, and the whole idea of running election was actually something that was very debatable within Angola itself, because for many reasons, because of what happened in the elections in 1992, where we embarked into a deeper civil war. Ever since then, we have been trying to make progress in terms of democracy, but there's definitely a big difference between how the elections used to be before and how the elections are now. And perhaps this is because of many other different things that are also now part of the whole process, such as social media, that actually is acting as a space of resistance, a space of counter disinformation, and a space where opposition party can also promote themselves. But in a way or another, I feel like the fact that UNITA has managed to win pretty much the whole of the diaspora, and this is the first time the diaspora is also voting in the general elections in Angola. There's a lot of signs that this young democracy, or this young progress or movement towards democracy is working in Angola. But again, there will always be questions, because the institutions that run the whole election process, they are very tied to the ruling party, and the people who run them, they pretty much part of the ruling party. So there will always be questions. But I think in terms of looking at history and looking at these elections in particular, these are perhaps the ones where there's a lot of positive signs here. And we heard from observers, external observers yesterday, saying that this is actually a very good sign. And more than that, this is actually the first elections that the country like the US did not send recommendations for the citizens to leave the country, because they're confident that this is going to be an election that are free and fair. But there will always be time, there will always be spaces for questions. And what we've been seeing on social media is how people who came up with this slogan, vote and sit, because people wanted to actually make sure that the votes are counted properly. In some areas, that actually came out to be, very helpful, because people were scared to promote or to publish the results, and they were all being exposed on social media. Because I feel like this is indeed a positive move in terms of how our democracy is looking like. But we still have a long way to go. But in terms of this election in particular, I really do believe that, there won't be mass contestation up to now.
All right. We certainly are excited about the positives, and we'll be following up with the elections. Thank you so much, Edmilson, Ângelo, for your time with us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much.